Hi everyone, hope you are doing well. I'm here today with yet another beautiful page built using just HTML and Tailwind CSS. This time we are creating a recipe page. Recipe pages are a fantastic way for restaurants and cooking sites to showcase their dishes. They often feature ingredient lists and instructions to prepare. Some premium websites offer exclusive recipes through email subscriptions. In this tutorial, we are building such a recipe page. It's beautiful and minimalistic, making it very attractive to showcase to your friends or post on social media. Here is what you will learn while building this page along with some other minor concepts. We will see how to use Tailwind's Flex and Grid utilities for creating responsive and well-structured layouts. We'll see techniques to make that page adapt to different screen sizes using Tailwind's responsive breakpoints, when and how to apply drop shadows and create smooth hover effects, styling input elements to fit seamlessly with the overall page design, and also how to effectively use the images for a visually appealing layout. Please note that this page looks amazing due to the transparent images and how they are used correctly. If you want to use the same images, please download the assets from the link in the description. Keep in mind that the images I used might have commercial licenses, so don't use them for commercial purpose, just for practice and showcasing them on social media. You will also get the finished code along with the assets. Keep it for reference, but don't start with that. Watch the tutorial and try to build it yourself first. And if you get to the end of this video building the entire page and decides to post it on social media, please don't forget to tag me. I would love to see your work. My social handles are on the screen and also in the description below. Here I am in my VS Code with a basic HTML and Tailwind CSS project setup. I used Tailwind CLI method to install Tailwind CSS. If you are not sure which method or how to install Tailwind CSS, I have made a playlist explaining various types of methods to install and use Tailwind CSS. The link is in the description, please check that. Assuming you have set up your project, let's begin coding. So in the index.html, first we will plan what are the sections that we will be building. So let's close the sidebar and here let's add some comments. So I will build the recipe details first, then ingredients, then other recipes, and then finally the subscribe section. First we'll make the body of this page a flex container so that we can center all the items in the middle. For that we'll use flex and then we will use flex column so that all the items will be vertically positioned, and then we will use the items to center them. And the first section, in this section we will have two main containers, each occupying half of the width of the screen. So we'll give width of 1 by 2, and we will have two containers, one for the text on the left side and other for the image on the right side. Let's have a look how this looks now. So this is how it looks. It is in the center because of the item center we used on the body tag. Now let's add some classes to this section. We'll give full width and screen height to this, and we'll make it a flex container so the text and image will be side by side instead of top and bottom. And inside the first container, the text content, we'll add a heading with the recipe name, and then we will have a list of items in a div container where we will add some information like the time to prepare, the calories, ingredients, etc. So in this div I'll add a svg icon. This is a clock svg. I took it from hero icons. You can just use any svg that you want. And below this, I'll add a paragraph tag showing the minutes to prepare, and then a Unicode character just to differentiate. I'll also add the calories and the number of ingredients. I'll save this. Let's have a quick look. Now let's add some description for this recipe in a paragraph tag. And also let's create another div container which holds two call to action buttons. And we will put these buttons inside an anchor tag by giving them a href. So on clicking it, it will go to the certain section that we want. So create anchor tag and then a button inside this. Check ingredients. And we will style this button. We'll give a bg orange and make the text white and the font semi bold. And on hover, I want a darker color, so I use bg orange 600. And I want some spacing around the text, so I will add some padding, but just let's look how this looks now. So this is how it looks now. Let's add some padding on the top to create some space, and also on the left and right. And we use py3 to add space in the y-axis and px 6 points in the x-axis. Now we will copy this and paste it one more time and change the text to get recipe, and make this also a flex container and add a gap of 6 so there is some space between the buttons. So this is how it looks. Now what we have to do, we have to increase the size of this text, make this a div like flex container so that they are in horizontal direction, and create gap between each of these elements, and center this whole content here in the center of the page in the left side. So for that, first in the section where we have this width of 1/2, we'll make this a flex container and add flex call so that they follow the vertical order. And we use justify center to center it vertically. And remember, justify center, these properties, these utilities will work based on the flex direction. So if we don't have flex, then justify center will make the items inside this center horizontally. But if we use flex call, the direction is column now, and then this, instead of centering it horizontally, it will center it vertically. If you're not sure how flex and grid works, I have made a detailed video explaining every utility for flex and grid in Tailwind CSS. Please have a look at that. So now with this, the content will be in the center. Now let's add container to this whole section and MX auto. This is a confusing topic which can be explained in a different video itself, but I'll give some brief information of what it does. So let's check the UI. You see there is this gap. Before it was not there, now it came because we added the container and MX auto. So what the container utility does is it creates a responsive container for the content, that is this content in this case, and it sets a maximum width on the element to match the width of the viewport. Viewport is this entire screen, and it does based on the various breakpoints that are provided by the Tailwind CSS. So it ensures the content stays centered and aligned across different screen sizes. And what MX Auto does is it centers the element horizontally by applying margin left auto and also margin right auto. So that is together called MX Auto. It typically used for centering block level elements like div. In this case, it's this section when you want the element to be centered within its parent container. In summary, the container ensures your content is responsive and aligned with the viewport, while MX Auto centers that content horizontally within its parent. Together, they are commonly used to create centered responsive layouts. So if you don't understand that, don't worry, we will go through it in a different video in depth. But for now, just understand that it creates some margin automatically based on the screen size. So for the heading, let's make it big by using 6XL, and then we'll make the font bold, and we'll add some margin to the bottom so that there is some space between this div element and this heading. And for this div container, we'll make it a flex container and add some gap so that there is some space between each of these elements, and make the text color slate 600, which is not so dark, just for the looks, and also show that this is not the primary text that user has to focus on. And we will add a margin bottom to this as well, and we'll make the item center to vertically align correctly, since we have SVG, this Unicode character, the text. In case if there are any inconsistencies, then with this all of them are vertically aligned correctly. Let's collapse this, and for the paragraph, let's add margin bottom 6. No more styling needed for this, it's fine this way. So let's save. So this is how it looks. We made this a flex container and we increase the text size for this. Now let's add the image on the right side. So here, let's add an image tag and import the image from the folder you have the images in. I have the images in the assets folder inside source folder, so I use this path. So based on where you have kept the images, import accordingly. So alt, let's see how it looks. So we have the image, but it's on the top and it's not centered correctly. So let's make this container that holds image a flex container and use justify center and item center to center it both horizontally and vertically. So now it is correctly aligned. So that's all for the first page. Let's create the second page now. We'll first create a heading. And below this, we'll create a grid layout which holds the list of ingredients. First, we'll make this section have some padding on y-axis, both on top and bottom, so that when we scroll from one page to another page, it doesn't look packed. There is some space to breathe. Next, for the heading, we'll make it bigger and also bold. And we'll add some margin to the bottom so that there is some space between the grid layout and this heading. Let's save and look. So we have the ingredients. And if you have noticed that it just blinked or lagged, we are using all high resolution images. So this image and every other image that I provided in the description, they are all extremely high resolution, even more than 4K. So they are in their full sizes, and it's not easy to load for the browser immediately. So that's why you might see some kind of lag, because we are working with a lot of images. For some reason, if you don't see the text in the center, you can add text center to explicitly mention that the text should be in the center. And coming to the next layout, the grid layout, we will make it a grid container using the utility called grid, and also by defining the number of columns you want. I want 3 columns inside this, and here inside this grid layout we will add all the ingredients. So for each ingredient I'm creating a container inside which I will have an image on the left, and I will have the name of the ingredient and the quantity on the right side. For that, I'll create another div inside and create the name of that and also quantity. So for the main div, we will add height of 24 and width of 96, and we will make it a flex container so that the image stays on the left and this div with text will be on the right. And we'll use item center to vertically center them, and we'll make the container rounded using rounded large. And we will not add any background to this, we will just add some shadow to differentiate and add some padding of 2 so that the content doesn't touch the edges. And for image, let's add a source, and we'll give the image the full height. In this case it's 24, but we will also add some padding so it doesn't touch the edges. And object cover, and add some margin right of 6 so there is some space between the text content. And inside this, let's add the name of the item and the quantity. And for the name, let's make it slightly big using text large and bold using font semi bold. And for the quantity, I'll make it slightly smaller and also add a lighter text. Now let's save it and see how it looks. So we have our first ingredient here. Now what we have to do is just copy this and paste it 11 more times for 12 ingredients in total. So this is how it looks after I replaced all the images, the names and the quantity. Now let's add some gap between these grid items. So here in the main div, which has all the ingredients, let's collapse this and let's add here gap of 12, and let's see how it looks. So I'm glad with this look. Now these are perfectly aligned, but to make sure that this particular ingredient is exactly in the center of a grid item, you can add place items center. So in some cases, based on the width you have given, if this is not exactly in the center, because of the place content item center, this will be exactly aligned in the center. So with that, we have finished the second section as well. Let's build the third section now. The structure is same as the last section. We'll have a heading, and then we'll have a grid layout which will have the 4 recipes. So for the section, we will add a padding in y-axis 24 points, and then for the heading and we will style the heading. We'll make the text big using text 5 XL, and we will make it bold, and we will add some margin to the bottom as well. And for the grid layout, to make a grid layout, we will add grid utility and define the number of columns. In this case, I want 4. And inside this, we will have a main container for the item, means the recipe. Inside this, we will have an image and the title of that item. So image, I'll import it. And give the name for it. Let's have a look. So this is how it looks without more styling. So we'll make the text come in the middle, and we'll reduce the size of this. And I want this more text to appear only on hovering this part, not by default. So let's make those changes. We'll add text center to the heading. And for the image, I want to set its size to 48. And I'll add the cursor pointer to that. And I want two things for this image. First one is to add a drop shadow on hover, and second one is to have its size increased on hover. So on hover, drop shadow to XL, and also on hover, increase its scale by 10%, so we can give 110 the value. So now what's the difference between drop shadow and a normal shadow is the normal shadow works for perfect shapes like rectangle, circle, like this, but drop shadow works for irregular shapes. Since we have this transparent image here, the browser can detect that it's a transparent image with no background. So when we add drop shadow, it will create shadow around this irregular shape, not for the element that it has. So if I add shadow here instead of drop shadow, you can see that the shadow is created for the element, not the image inside. So that's the difference between shadow and drop shadow. So let's remove this. And you also observed how immediately it is scaling up. So I want a smooth transition, and for that I can use transition transform. So there are several properties for transition. If you want to apply the transition only for opacity, you can use opacity. If you want to apply transition for shadow, you can use that. In this case, I want to apply for scale. Scale is changing its height and width, so it is considered transform. So I'll use transition transform. And add a duration, means how long it takes to come from scale 100 to scale 110. Also the smoothing function, I use ease in out. Let's check the UI. Its height is okay, and on hover you can see it's increasing its scale with some transition, with some smoothness. Now let's make the changes to the text. We'll create some gap between the image and the text, and we'll center the text, make it slightly bigger using text XL, and also make the font semi bold. And here, as I said, I want the opacity to be 0, means I don't want it to appear by default. And when we use hover, I want the opacity to be 100. And just like the previous image, we will add the transition and the duration properties to this, so that it doesn't immediately blink and shows the name of the items with some transition. So transition opacity, in this case I'll add the duration 500, and the same is in out. Now let's check how this looks. So we don't see the text by default, and on hover we can see the image have its animation, but we have to hover on this part to reveal the text. But user does not know that there is text there. We know we created it, but generally they hover on the image. So to fix that, what we have to do is to make this entire div a group using the class group. And what we can do is, based on this group, we can allocate some certain actions for the elements inside it. So what I want to do is, when someone hovers on this entire group, I want to create some action for this particular paragraph element. So instead of hover opacity 100, I'll use group hover. Means if somebody hovers on this group, we'll make the opacity 100. Let's save it. Now if you hover on this element, you can see the text appeared. Now what we will do is copy this div element and paste it 3 more times to get 4 recipes, and then just change the names of it. So I'll copy this, I'll paste it 3 more times. Let's see how it looks. Now there is not much space between each item, so let's add some space between each item. So where you have set the grid and the number of columns, use there gap 32. Now we have these images clearly aligned with proper spacing, and it doesn't look so crowded. So I like this way. Now let's just add the, change the images and also the text for that. So I have changed the names, the image names, and also the alt text, and this is how it looks, and everything is working perfectly. So now let's go to the subscribe section. And here we will have a heading and a paragraph below that, and below that we will create a form which has an input box and a CTA button. So input and then a button. We'll remove the action and let's style the subscribe section. First we'll add some padding to the bottom, and let's style the heading. We'll make it text 4XL and make it font semi bold, and let's create some margin bottom to have some space between this paragraph and the heading. And for this paragraph we'll just add margin bottom of 12, so there is some more space between the form element. And in the form, let's change the input type to mail, and let's add a placeholder. And let's style this. Let's have a look before styling. So this is how it looks. One thing we can do here is to make the text center, so it's not starting from the left. So we'll add to the section text center. Now I'm adding text center to the main section instead of heading and paragraph tag. Instead of adding 2 times to heading and paragraph, we can directly add to the section so that these two elements will automatically take this utility. And let's style this. So when you click on this input box, you can see that there is this default outline. We can get rid of that by using focus outline none. Here focus means when you click on the input box, that's when it is focused. So when focused, we want to remove that outline, so focus outline none. And we'll give a width to this, width of 96, and we'll add a border just to the bottom, border bottom 2. And then on hover, we'll make that border color orange. Also, we'll add padding in y-axis 1.5 and in the x-axis 3. Let's save it. So this is how it looks. The text is centered, and when you click on this, you can see that there is a border in the bottom. Why it's coming on hover? Let's, okay, instead of focus I wrote hover, so yeah, it should be focus. Now let's style the button, subscribe now. We'll add the similar styling like the CTA buttons we added in the main section, the first section. So we'll make the background orange, and on hover we can make it darker. We'll make the text white, font semi bold, and add some margin on the left so that there is some space between the input box and this button. Okay, let's add some padding to this button. So EY3 and PX6. Okay, that looks good for me. So let's check the entire website once. So we have the hero section with the recipe details. Okay, we forgot one thing. On clicking this, I wanted to redirect to that specific section. So let's do that. So what we have to do is, for this section subscribe, let's add an ID subscribe, and then for the ingredient section, add the ID of ingredients. And now in the first section, to this href, we have to add that ID ingredients to this button and subscribe to this button. Let's save, and now check this, check ingredients. So it went to the ingredients, then get recipe, it went to this. But you saw how suddenly it went without the scrolling. So to enable that, we can go to the input.css and here add HTML, and there is a property called scroll behavior, and you can set it to smooth. So now when you click on that, it doesn't go immediately, but it goes with a smooth scrolling. So let's click check ingredients, and you can see it smoothly transitioned to that place. Same way for get recipe. So this is better. So that's all with the desktop version. Now let's make this responsive using Tailwind's breakpoint system and make this responsive for mobile. So this is how it looks on mobile. Ingredients, not even a section looks good by default. So we have to make changes to all the pages. If you are not aware of the Tailwind's responsive system, please know that there are 5 breakpoints. Those are different set of widths. For example, there is SM, which has 640 pixels of width provided by Tailwind CSS. we have to define the breakpoint and make the changes that we need. What I mean by that, let's take the title for example. So how Tailwind works by default is it expects you to create the mobile version of a website first and then add breakpoints based on the screen size. So let's remove this 6XL. Now let's add text XL. So what Tailwind assumes is that text XL is for mobile. Then for small devices, that is SM, where the width is 640 pixels and more, you can add text 2XL for example. And like that we have 4 more breakpoints, that is medium, large, extra large, and double extra large. So each breakpoint has certain width. For example, this one has 1536 pixels, XL has 1280, large has 1024, and medium has 768, and small 640 pixels. So based on that pixel size, if you want to change certain utility, this is how you do it. You give by default text XL, for small device text 2XL, for medium device text 3XL, and so on. So let's delete this, and now we'll start with this only. I want text 4XL on mobile, and on large devices I want text 6XL that we saw in the desktop version. Your task here is to practice for the medium breakpoint. I will do for mobile and also for the desktop, and your task is to create a medium breakpoint and add whatever you feel like. You check the output on a tablet and see what looks better, and like that you will practice this whole page and try to make it tablet responsive as well. Now let me do it for mobile. Let's start with the section. So here we have a flex container, so and this is in the row direction. Even though we don't specify it, by default it means the flex is in row direction. So for the large screen, flex row, and by default we want it to be in the column direction, so we'll give flex col. And by saving this, you can see text on top and image on the bottom, but I want it to be opposite. For that you can use flex col reverse. Now the image is on top and text is in the bottom. So the next thing is we have width 1/2 for these two containers, that's why it is not occupying the full width. So let's add full width to this, and on large devices width 1/2. Let's save this. Now they are occupying the full space, full width. Now I want them to occupy the height also equally, so I'll give h1/2. This is on mobile screen, but on large screens I want the h to be auto. I'll save it, and they will occupy the height also equally now. And the image seems to be on top, and there is more space between the title, means the text content, and this. So now in the image section we have given item center, that's why it's in the center. Now let's keep it for large screens and add items end, so that that comes to the bottom. Also add some padding so that they don't touch the edges. We'll give it to the main section, padding x 6, and on large screens padding x 0. We don't want padding on the default desktop, we just want it on the mobile version. So now this looks fine. And another thing I want to do here is to give equal width for these buttons, so on mobile it looks better. For that we have to open this section. Here in this div we have the two buttons. What we will do is add half width to this anchor tag so that it takes exactly half of the width, and then we'll use width full for the button. Let me show that. we'll use width 1/2, and on large devices we want the width to be auto because we want the buttons to have full width only on mobile devices. And after this, for the buttons, add width full, but on large devices width auto. Let's save this, and now you can see that these buttons are perfectly aligning with the mobile screen. This looks better. Now let's go to the next section, the ingredients. This will be really simple. So in the ingredients section, here we have given grid columns of 3. Now all we have to do is to add grid columns 1 on mobile, and on large screens grid columns 3. That's all. We don't have to do anything else. See, it's perfectly aligned. That's the advantage of using grid utilities. Now if you are doing for tablet version, maybe you can give MD breakpoint and add grid calls too. And text will reduce the size slightly. We'll keep it 4XL on small devices, and on large devices 5XL. Now coming to the next section, other recipes. Make the same for this grid layout as well. Grid calls 1, and then for large devices 4. And these items are not exactly in the center. So for this, we can add the place items center, and now they will be exactly in the center like this. And you can leave it like that because even on desktop version it would be center. And also the gap is so much here, so let's reduce that gap. I want the gap of 32 to be on the large screens, but on mobiles I just want gap of 12. And also here we can't see text. On mobile devices we can't hover, so I want to show the text by default. So let's expand these images. So here we have given opacity of 0, and then on group hover we are making it 100. So what we have to do is we have to give opacity of 0 on large devices, but on mobile devices we have to add opacity of 100. So this will make the hover effect work on the desktop devices and show the text by default in the mobile version. I saved it, and see, we can see the name of it without hovering. So I'll just copy this and paste it for other sections as well. Wherever there is opacity 0, I'm adding opacity 100 and large opacity 0. Let's save it, and see on the left side we can see all the names of the items. And let's reduce the size of this. Check out other recipes. So we'll make it text 4XL, and on large devices 5XL. Let's add some padding on the left and right so that it doesn't touch the edges. I'll add padding X of 6. And you don't need to add padding for the desktop version because even if there is padding on the desktop version, there is so much space and you really don't need it. But if you want, then just add padding X0 for desktop version large. So we are done with this section. Now the subscribe section. So we'll make the text 2XL, and on large devices 4XL. And for the paragraph, we'll make the text small, and on large devices the default text, that is text base. Let's save it. And let's add some padding so that this doesn't go occupy the full width. So I'll add padding x of 12 for the text. That is better. And also I'll add leading relaxed, means the space between these two lines will be increased, just like that. It's just better for readability. In this case it might not be so relevant, but generally it's better. And finally, for the input box, this form element will add a margin top of 6 so that there is space between the input box and the button. And on large device we don't want any margin. Also we have margin left on the large screens, so let's add margin left of 0 so that it is exactly centered. Let's save this. So yeah, let's check the entire website once. We have the main page, then ingredients, the other recipes. Yeah, everything seems perfect. I don't think we need to make any more changes. Let's understand what we have learned in this tutorial. First thing, we have seen how to use flex call and flex call reverse properties. We used the grid utilities to represent images in a grid layout and used responsive breakpoints to ensure that our design adapts smoothly to different screen sizes. Then we checked when to use and how to use the drop shadows and animate the hover effects. We styled the input box not to have its default behaviors and made it look polished using the primary color of our website. And we also saw how to manage images effectively using them in a way that complements the overall design of the page. If you found value in this video, please leave a comment and let me know what new thing you learned. If you want more content like this, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching and happy coding.